is it recording?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so today we've done a walking section, which is a continuous section that starts on one side of the page and keeps moving forward, even though things might overlap. We'll talk about that in a minute. For homework, what you guys have done is to create at least a minimum of 3 moments, where you gather the material, light, shadow, perceptual information, an indication of what the plan should be, although the plan is partial. So you might know some information about what's around the corner and unseen, but you don't have all the information. You have previously, through your site and program analysis, placed your architecture on the site. And so now what we are doing is we are trying to design your building from the inside. They're locked down. We're trying to design the building from the most important experiences outwards. So rather than kind of coming up with an idea of like, I want the building to be this shape, and then forcing the stuff into it, right? Kind of imagine like trying to make a burrito by not wrapping up the burrito, but instead having the burrito already wrapped and shoving the food into it. It would not work very well. So instead what we're doing is, right, we're trying to pick out the ingredients of the piece of the burrito to give the flavor experience that you want to have, layering them in an interesting way, and then allowing the building to wrap itself. It gives you the whole burrito, okay? So we've done this walking section. Here's what you guys have told me is revealing about doing the walking section. It makes you stop and think about stairs and verticals more. And I think that's actually a good thing, because oftentimes, in my experience, students don't spend enough time on stairs. They just kind of plop them in, they make them go back and forth. And stairs can actually be a really important vertical experience. We experimented with that on the ramp today in particular, because ascending and descending is a very different feeling. And you guys have already done a bunch of work on ascension. That was very much on purpose. The first project that you did under my guidance was about ascending the hill. And the ascension feels one way, the descending feels another way. So we've been focused on that ascending. So I'm not surprised that this is both the most challenging, but also perhaps one of the more important moments, right? Is where we move in the vertical. You guys said that it helps, there's a lot of things to juggle, and so a lot of the skills that we've been going over are how to break down all of the complexity of architecture into some components where we're not working on them by themselves, right? We did the site analysis where you worked on the program, when you just split out the site analysis to just sun, just hydrology, just vegetation, and it didn't work. So what was important was to take some of those layers and couple them together. So we did the site analysis and the program. Here, right, there's a lot to deal with. So trying to figure out the entire plan of the building is difficult. What we're looking at is how you move through the space, what the volume of the space is, and what are the thresholds of the space. So we're partnering those things together, and Elena, you said it was helpful to focus on one side, or give preference, right? Another word of doing this is that you're giving a hierarchy, right? So what you're looking at first, and what you're looking at second. So I'm just gonna add that in here, right? So a hierarchy to the way that you work. The other thing that I've done for each of these exercises that we've done over the past few weeks is that there's a time limit to it. And I think that's really important too, because if you have tons of time, then the work expands to fill the void. And if you don't have enough time, then you rush and it's not as good. But once you guys get warmed up and you have pencil, pen, and plenty of paper, you start to add detail. Then you start to realize that you've added too much detail. And then you start to, jettison the detail that is not important and figure out the way to draw that works for you, that is important. And here's what you guys have said. Breaking down each space into its components allows you to give it that hierarchy. Volume, program, materiality, people, environment, and light. And right there, that's basically what Design 4 is all about. Those are our learning objectives in Design 4, is to figure out how to harness all of those things. Cool. Line weights and line types allow you to record your thinking, because you're not going to remember it, even if you try really hard. It also allows other people to look at your drawing without you having to explain it to them, because you've recorded your thoughts. It allows you to adjust for the exact things, which is helpful because you know where they are, but it also helps you record the inexact things Alex, you called those the emotional thresholds. I like that word. But we are also talking about the social thresholds. All right, and somewhere between adjusting your line weight and your line types, you get that. And then the key component that we're trying to be aware of today is this idea of thresholds, right? And what are all those different thresholds and what they can be. Okay, so now the next component, and this is what we're going to do for homework, okay, is bringing those moments together into a more coherent plan. Now, the plan may still not be 100% complete. We may not know what the entire boundary or perimeter of your architecture is, which is fine because it's dug into the site and there's a lot of landscape that you're responsible for, right? Either because you're digging a hole and you need to heal that wound in the land, or because you are designing and activating part of the landscape to get your user group, your program, your people to inhabit. Okay, so here's an example. I'm drawing a walking section as well. And I just named these positions, C, A, B, and D. And you'll see that they show up again. So A is here, and A is here. B is here, and B is here. C is here, and C is here, and D is on these two places. So as you walk through the section, you can see that you're walking, and the ground is moving away from you, and there's water down here, but you're moving up away from the ground onto a flat platform. And from that flat platform, you can look down and see C, but you can also look up and see B. And then you continue to move along that platform. And I'm gonna use the words, right, vertical movement. I'm gonna use the words threshold. I'm not gonna use the word window, door, or floor, okay? So we move vertically again, across the staircase to another platform, B, where I can look down and see A, but I can also look down and see C from the top of that platform, right? That's the experience vertically in that space, right? So the space has gotten shorter, I'm taller, and then I can move through a series of kind of lighter weight thresholds out to see where I am, which is D. All right, so here I can move visually, here I can move physically. And of course, D, from where I am at D, I can look back through where I was and see B, but I cannot see, and I can also see C, because D is also here. Now, this feels really confusing because that's not how we experience the world, right? But if we were to videotape, a walking section is a video. So if you imagine that the video, you were holding it parallel, and Elena, like you said, only looking in one direction, say to the left, and we videoed walking through, up the ramp, through studio, down the staircase, right? When we go down the staircase, that video looking left would see the landing down there, and then it would no longer see the landing, it would be descending the stairs, and then it would see the landing up here. And if you think about the video, and I had you guys draw the video would just continue in a linear fashion. We could adjust the height of the video in section, but it would keep moving this way. Even if you walked all the way around the building and then ended up back at the ramp, it would, on the video, it would seem like there was a ramp here and there was a ramp here, not that they do this, right? Because in a video exists in 2 dimensions and time, but not in, it doesn't have the 3rd dimension, it's flat. The 3rd dimension is implied. But we are 3-dimensional beings, so we know that things can wrap around and exist on the other side of stuff. So here's the plan, drawn from this section. So here we are, C, and we walk up a ramp. Under that ramp is a body of water. We walk up that ramp C to a position A where we can see that, but we can also look up a staircase to B. So from A, we can see C, and we can look up and see B above us. What we don't know, because you can't see it in this section, is that we move in the direction of the section. So you move out and walk up the staircase, but because the section can only move forward, it appears that it's in front of us. So we move up the staircase, up to another platform where we are B. From B, we can look down and see A, and we can look down and see C, like this. From B, we can exit, and the ground has moved up to meet us at our platform. So from B, we walk straight out to where D is, and we have this experience. And from D, I can look back and I can see B, but from D, I can also look down the hill and see C. So from the walking section, we have a plane. So this is the notation you guys are used to, and this is what we just did. Now, One of the things that you guys saw in your plans, and we'll videotape a couple of examples, is that there's moments in the architecture where a lot of information happens. So Elena, you got caught up on the ramp because there was a ton of information. There was a density of information there. Jessica, you got stuck kind of in the hallway because there's so many thresholds in that hallway. There were so many things to look at. Where were some of the spaces that you guys walked through that were fast? So there's just not a lot of information.
This hallway right here.
This hallway.
Yeah.
Because this hallway is relatively simple, there's not a lot going on, and it's tertiary spaces that are off of it, right? It's a storage room and a storage room, so you move through it quickly. It's also narrow and unimportant, right? So you move through it quickly. What are other spaces that you guys were quick to document?
Like the hallway between where the interior designers are and then the elevator.
Okay, so we'll call those kind of like, you know, servant hallways, basically like secondary circulation, right? Which means it's not that important, it doesn't take that long. What else?
I guess outside, when I was walking around.
Outside can be, because the land, and that's more because, it's not because there isn't lots of information outside, it's just that the information is spread out more. So it's a little bit faster to document. It doesn't mean it's not important, it's just spread out more, and therefore it's a different type of drawing. How about the big studio space upstairs? You guys moved through that actually relatively quickly because it was big, and so the volume was large, and there's plenty of space to put in the details, so the details didn't get kind of packed up on each other.
I also think because it was a lot of repetition.
Yes.
So if there's like, because it was desks and it was like a wall and then there would be a break. But
Yes.
like when you're down here, it's a lot different because there's desks on both sides
Right.
and they're not lined up.
And I will say, yeah, there's a lot of clarity and plan to the spaces upstairs. Down here, it's kind of cut up into this like rabbit warren of spaces that don't really follow a structural module, right? So this goes back to some of the things that we learned about programming, where having a module is really helpful to, when you're lost, to kind of give you some boundaries to work off of. So when we were kind of defining our structural diagrams, working off of a structural grid where you can do either the halves or the thirds helps you work on the design more efficiently, more effectively than if we make a ton of very bespoke, strange shapes. Nothing slows down design faster than trying to design something to go in the space of a triangle where nothing can fit. Nothing slows down design faster than kind of making weird shapes for weird shapes' sake, just to, quote, make it look interesting, right? What we're really interested in is, would you guys say this is a complex experience? Do you guys see how this is not a complex building? So, oftentimes I think we conflate interesting with complexity. And I think that oftentimes we use these two words interchangeably when they're not. Complicated and complex. This is complex. It is not complicated. You guys have all made a model which gets complicated, right? It's hard, it's like you need multiple people to hold it while it's gluing, it keeps falling apart, you can't get the idea in your head, there's too many moving parts, it's overwhelming. That's complicated. This is complex. From any space, you can view at least two, from the 4 spaces, in any of these spaces, you can view at least 2 other spaces, and you can get to the one that you can't see. It has a stair, a ramp, it's dug into the ground, and there's some water. It's on a grid. You guys said, not me, you said it is complex. It is architecturally interesting. It engages the landscape, the people, the materiality, the volume of the program, and definitely light. We can now start detailing this in a very interesting way. So as you guys work on the homework, I want you to keep this in mind. You can find complexity without making it complicated. It's about making some decisions on what you're going to focus on, breaking it down to keep focused on these things, and following these principles of line weights, which you have already said are important. So, for the homework, you know where you are on the site, you know the moments that you want to have. So what you're going to do is a section that puts these moments together. So you're going to have to do a long walking section where you lay out these moments and where they need to be vertically against each other and kind of tell the story in between, which means that you might start to have a lot of information in some areas. And a whole lot of density in certain spaces. And then some vacuous spaces where you're not really sure where there is things. But as long as you keep drawing in the people, even if you don't have connections between all of them, right? If you can start to say how those spaces might need to start relating to each other as a sectional experience. Now, the other thing that you guys did is when we got down to this level, you guys spread out and everybody took different walking sections. I've only shown one way to move through this building. If you look at first year projects, they're generally a roller coaster ride, which means like you sit on the roller coaster and you go through it in one direction, right? And it's very typical for a beginning design student to say you start here, then you go to here, then you go to here, then you go to here. But what you guys discovered is that on this floor, there's tons of different ways to walk. So this walking section is not the section, it is a section. It doesn't mean that the spaces can't be rearranged onto each other. But what you need to do is that at least two of your sections need to connect in a vertical way. And at least two of your sections need to connect in a horizontal way. Call them moments. And then you want two moments to connect visually, or acoustically, or another way, or we'll use Alex's term, emotionally, but not physically. All right? So as you start to lay out your drawings and your spaces, and you can use your photographs. So here's the thing, we're not starting from zero. We're starting with the drawings that you've already made. We're trying to understand that this is one of the spaces that you've been drawing here. And there's a volume to this space that you've been drawing over here where A is. You know, that you might want to also connect it. So let's say that this is the A drawing that you've been working on. Maybe the B drawing that you're working on also has something to do with it. So you're starting to draw in that piece as well. They don't all need to connect. So these ones might be on the same level, even though there's no physical overlap or connection with them. So a minimum of two spaces will connect vertically. That's this connection. A minimum of two spaces will connect horizontally. In my example, that's this connection. And two other spaces will not connect physically, but they might connect visually or acoustically. One of my favorite stories is, so in the Japanese palace, Katsura Villa, there is a wall. On the opposite side of that wall is the direction that the prevailing wind comes from. And on the opposite side of that wall are orange trees. And they're specifically on the other side of the wall so that when the orange trees blossom, you can smell the orange trees, but you don't see the orange trees. And since you're not caught up in seeing them, your sense of smell is heightened because you hit the smell without the anticipation of seeing it. So that's an example of a connection that might happen, right? Where one sense is heightened because you've limited the other ones. There is nothing more exciting than being able to see something and not get to it, right? That drives you to want to figure out how to get there. We've experienced that literally on the site. There's nothing like being on the site and you can hear something and it draws you towards it. That was the waterfall that's on the site. The spring on the site, you guys heard it before you saw it, and the sound magnetically drew you towards it. So that's an example of this type of connection. So using those minimum of 3, maximum of 5 moments that you photographed, start figuring out how they can coexist next to each other and how we can kind of start to elicit a plan from it. Those structural diagrams are going to start to marry on top of each other, okay? Now, the plan, what we're doing is we went from partial plans to putting partial plans together. And then by Tuesday of next week, we'll be able to say, this is what the building looks like. Now, one of the things that you guys have already said is that this hallway is not that important. Like, it exists, but it's tertiary. So as we complete our burrito, if I can go back to the burrito example, right? So in the burrito, key ingredients to a burrito, most important ingredients in the burrito are meat, beans, cheese. All right, I would say that those are important. And then rice is like secondary. Rice is like important filler. It's very important filler. It glues the stuff together. And then you put the skin in. You wrap it, right? You wrap it in the tortilla. Maybe you do lettuce, but the lettuce is not, the lettuce is tertiary. Lettuce pads it out so that the meat doesn't bust through the sides. We're gonna spend the most of our time designing the important spaces, right? Entries, chapel space. Where the bathrooms are is important. That the bathroom is the appropriate size is important. That the bathroom can accommodate a wheelchair is important. Knowing the exact placement of the door and the hand dryer so that it's not next to the classroom so you can't hear it through the wall, that's probably important. But exactly where that hand dryer is placed is not important for this level of studio. I'm not saying it's not important, I'm saying it's not important for this level of studio. Take design 8, and then you'll need to know where all the things line up. Okay, can you stop? So, for homework, we've gone through what the walking section is. The idea for the walking section is to take the moments that you have already made in studio, that you've already been developing, On those moments, you have an idea of structure, of scale, of materiality, light and shadow, site and program coming together. So, using those moments, the suggestion is to connect two of them vertically, overlapping, so that they're informing each other. It might mean that they're looking at the space from slightly different directions. So you might explore how those go together. Document it. The suggestion is that two of them might be on the same level. So you might not actually have them physically connected with each other. There might be design that you need to do in between to connect the two pieces, but to connect them horizontally on the same level. And the other suggestion or challenge that I would give to you guys is that there's elements where they're not physically connected, but they're visually connected to each other, or perhaps acoustically connected to each other. So you can think about how those are built together. As you build that walking section and you think about site, program, and connecting those moments, it will start to give you an idea of looking at your program and site analysis that you've already done. You've kind of figured out where those moments are, so you can begin to make a more complete partial plan. Let's say that the plan is like 80% there and 20% of the building we haven't drawn yet, right? That 20% of the building will be the rice of if we think about the building as a burrito, and you guys are focused on the protein, the beans, the cheese, right? The 20% of the building that's left is the rice and the lettuce that will fill in the gaps, all right? As you're doing all of this, the ecosystem that we need to work in is the moments that we have, so the photographs, the light and shadow, the site program, the drawing that you have, which is the walking section, and of course the other component, because photographs and sections can't be in 3D, we need a three-dimensional component. So the last component of that ecosystem is perspectives, moments, drawings, walking section, model, 8 scale. And this is our chance to go back and utilize that site model that you guys have poured so much time and energy into and start getting the dividends that it pays out of it. If you are incredibly worried that you're going to cut the model and it's going to make all of your friends angry, you can build your own model, but that's going to take more time. So what I'm going to recommend is that you guys work with each other and figure out how to slice the model so that you can put the model into it. And what we'll do right now is we'll go up and we'll look at some examples of how that might happen. But we're going to do 8 scale. Your model needs to have the volume of the program, so the building blocks that we used, but you might want to adjust or build new building blocks. The wood shop is open. You can go over and with MDF or with pine, not hardwood, but light pine, you can make volume very quickly. We've gone over how to do that. That's why we did the exercise in the wood shop, so that you guys are comfortable working that way and quickly. There's moments that you want to detail. You've already taken pictures of those moments. We have added basswood and Bristol paper and chipboard to add a little bit more detail. So that indicates structure, material. We have done this model. Once you build it, we can turn a light on it. Alex has my lamp. You can turn your light on it. Somebody has the borescope and you can take more pictures. You can draw over it even more. So the things that you make can help you generate the other things of the homework. And of course, the most important thing is that it is integrated into the site. It cannot do this, because if it does this, you guys already know, you've proven to it yourself time and again that if you do this, it misses the point, so you have to bake them together. So the homework is the perspectives you already have, but to utilize those perspectives to make a drawing and to utilize that drawing to make a model. Synthesizing your skills.